So today we're going to talk about sort of how here at Fifth Element we sort of periodize our training and what does that even mean? Um, like today's overview, like I want you to get an understanding of how we think and like our genuine thought process about training and exercise programs. I want you to understand the physiological benefits and the behavioral considerations that make up our programming. Hopefully, at the end of this, you've got some clear tools and a better understanding of the system. Potentially, you can help program for yourself and sort of what each week represents within a phase. And hopefully, you have some clear intention out of how to make the most out of that week. So let's delve into that a little bit. What is sort of training and movement and everything to do with our health and wellness broken into? Well, it's broken into a big macro cycle. So a macro cycle can be varied lengths, but here at Fifth, we do them over 12 months. 12 months is critical for us at Fifth because it gives us enough time to help somebody to get the tools that they need to make long-lasting, sustained change. That's the whole basis of the 12-month macro cycle for us. We're sick and tired of people riding the ups and downs and the roller coaster of their health and wellness journey. So 12 months allows us to incorporate some habits and some tools to help people hopefully have a more linear approach to their health and wellness and not ride that roller coaster. So that's really, really important to us. And it gives us enough time to help them build the confidence around these habits to navigate their health. We break that macro cycle into 4 12-week cycles, really. 12-week journeys is what we call them in here. This is all around our big picture planning. Then we break those 12-week journeys into mesocycles. We have 3 of them. Our mesocycles are about 4 weeks, and we just call them a phase in here. We'll get to why we do that a little later on. We then have microcycles within those 4 weeks, and that's just our weeks broken up. So there'll be 4 microcycles in our mesocycle, in which there'll be 3 of those in our 12-week journeys, in which there'll be 4 of those that make up your year. All right. Hopefully that wasn't too much of a mouthful. Put your hand up and let me know as we go along, or feel free just to jump in if you need any further clarification on anything. So what do we really consider when we're programming, and what should you consider when you're thinking about your training program or self-programming if that's what you're doing? We think of 3 main things, but 2 specifically: the physical and the physiological adaptations that we actually want from this training program to reach somebody's goals. That's really important. We then have to then delve a bit deeper and figure out what are the motivational and behavioral considerations that's going to help them sustain this long term. And then the third thing would be, what are the holistic practices that are going to help them do both of those things over the course of the 12-month period that we're trying to at least work with somebody? Because that's really important for the long-lasting, sustainable piece. That means it's not just a thing that they're doing, but it's a new habit and hopefully a lifestyle that it's turning into. And once you've reached a lifestyle that you're turning into, it isn't something that you're riding the roller coaster of anymore. Puts you in the driver's seat, so to speak. So let's kind of differentiate between those a little bit. What would a physiological adaptation be? There's heaps of them. It could be muscular activation. It could be increasing your aerobic fitness. It could be everything to do with flexibility, joint mobility, postural improvements, strength and power, neurological adaptations, coordination, better movement patterns. Great. This is all a physiological adaptation. And we're definitely looking to do those throughout your training programs. Motivation and behavioral considerations. That's things like establishing consistency, embracing and overcoming challenges, monitoring progress, building self-efficacy within your program, helping people cultivate a growth mindset, getting people to enable themselves to do self-directed learning, getting people to celebrate their progress and their successes more, hopefully building confidence, helping them with support, push their own comfort levels and boundaries, fostering resilience. This is all the motivational behavioral side of what we're trying to embark on throughout definitely a 12-month macro cycle, but that gets broken up into our 4-week phases. So I want to break this down into the sort of 3 sort of clients or people that we kind of break people into levels, really, because it really helps coach people through, and it helps coach them through what success can potentially look like in each one of the phases, but more importantly, what each specific week could be within those phases. So obviously level one or a beginner, we start there, and it's they're new to the gym or they're new to health and wellness. They're definitely new to fifth element if they're training with us. We don't love timeframes, but they're normally training for about under 12 months. They'll have structural imbalances. They'll have potentially real dominant strengths, which causes those structural imbalances. They'll have low levels of strength, limited flexibility, mobility, poorer movement patterns, and they won't really understand or be able to do a proper basic movement pattern. We're talking squats and deadlifts and some lunging and things of that regard. I said something about time duration. One of the caveats is time doesn't really mean you progress through the levels of being more experienced. It just means you've done more time. And we see plenty of people with 2, 3, 4, 5 years of experience that have spent a lot of time in the health or gym environment that are actually beginners due to a lot of these structural imbalances, mobility issues, dominant strengths, really glaring weaknesses, and their ratios are so far apart that they come with those structural imbalances and normally injuries, which is why we always start them at a beginner phase because of that. Speaking of, though, intermediate type client at fifth, they'd be sort of post 12 months. These differ, 6 to 12 to 18 months, depending on the person, and not everyone's progress is linear like that, but standard rule of thumb. By this stage, they've got increased flexibility, mobility. There'll still be some underlying tightness or biomechanical issues or range of motion issues, and that's totally fine. But they'll have a much better understanding of movement patterns, and they'll be able to execute our basic lifts to a really satisfactory level. They'll have increased strength, they'll have increased confidence, they'll feel great about where they are in the space, and they'll feel really confident being in the gym environment and doing some training. So that's really important. Our more advanced clientele, they're just further along on the journey, and they have high levels of strength, power, aerobic capacity, endurance, cardiovascular fitness, whatever they may be working on. They'll have great flexibility, great range of motion. They'll have really good understanding of neuromuscular activation, which is just the brain to muscle connection, with great coordination and really not too many glaring weaknesses. So that's kind of the thresholds that we kind of have for clientele or just people in general to be able to help maximize what we put in their program so they get the most out of their program, because giving a beginner something that an advanced person has is detrimental to their progress and vice versa. But again, everyone's unique and different on their journeys, so we're just trying to help people as they go. Is everyone with me so far? Beautiful. I can see you laughing, Vince. I don't know how that's happening again, but we won't worry about it. So let's talk the 4 weeks, because this is really important. So general rule, right? The less experience you are in the gym, the shorter your training blocks are going to be, because you need more cadence with variation and a coach to help you through that. So that's really important. But as a standardized version here at Fifth, we do them all in 4 weeks, because we find that generally helps people the most on their journey. So we'll delve into that in a second. Week 1, we like to call it the foundation week. So, general rule of thumb, it's laying the groundwork for the phase. Just in general, it doesn't matter what phase you're in. Week 1, foundation week. So this week is crucial as it introduces your brain and your body to the new routine and a new set of challenges. So this is where your brain starts to form new neural pathways, and it adapts to these new stimulus, which is really important. And this is why the first week feels so uncomfortable for most people. I like to think of neural pathways as a road, and if they haven't been worked on to the right capacity, it's a dirt gravel track. As we start to do the movement patterns with the right neural engagement and the right muscular activation in the right sequence with the right tempo, you just start to pave that road, and each time you do it, it gets smoother and smoother and smoother. And it goes from a country dirt road track to the newest laid road driving down, and they're completely different. And that's why coordination feels so much better when you've done it through repetition with good quality technique and tempo. And that's what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to start that journey in the first week. This sets the stage for sustainable progress in the weeks to come. So what should you be looking for in week 1? Well, you're going to build awareness around the movements. This is a big frustration for most people, especially if they're new. So this will be super important for beginners. For advanced people, it might be the same movements that you already know, but with your coach, you want to know how to do them specifically for that phase, because the same exercises can be done completely differently, and the way that you do them differently can have a completely different desired outcome, and that'll be important based on whatever goals you are. So your coach should be explaining that to you as you go. You obviously want to get a feel for the movement technique, and as we just discussed, feel the right muscles engaging. You're also going to figure out what weights feel comfortable in this phase and what that looks like with good technique. This is essential to map out progress for your month. The big caveat, you're going to figure out how long these workouts take, because everyone thinks they're going to take 40, 45, 60 minutes, but we want them to take the exact time period that you and your coach discussed. And that's essential because it needs to fit into your week. If it doesn't fit into your week in the duration that you want, it's not going to lead to consistency, which means you're not going to get the result at the end of the phase. So this can be tweaked, knowing that it will take longer in week 1 than it will in week 4 when you find your groove. What you're going to do in this phase is you're actually going to keep this week is you're going to keep the sets lower. So normally if it's 3 sets, we'd more than likely do 2. And this is for a couple of reasons. It shortens up the workout, which is great, but it also helps you with your neurological fatigue. And most people just can't handle the volume of the new exercises with all those neural pathways, which puts a lot of stress on the nervous system every single time you're learning that. So we keep it to 2, which then means you get a shorter workout and you recover better without all the fatigue kicking in. That's week 1. That's what we're looking for. Week 2, we call it the reinforcement week. So what do we do in the reinforcement week? We build, or we continue to build around the foundations that we laid in week 1. We're not only looking for increased intensity, but we're looking to reinforce this muscular activation technique, tempo that we've just worked upon in week 1. This is essential for progress. So this is really important because as your brain's reward system kicks in, it helps you activate and tackle the greater challenges that are about to come up in weeks 3 and week 4. And this is pivotal in getting the most and the success out of your phases. So as a beginner, you're just starting to get familiar with the program. This is nice. It feels better than week 1 for sure. You definitely feel a little bit more confident in the way that you're moving or what the exercises are. So that's amazing. And we love that. Through sort of the intermediate and the advanced clientele, well, we're still going to work on those techniques and those tempos. We might start to progress a little bit. My perfect, or the way that I love to coach people is in this week, I'll either slow down the tempo to get more activation, which actually causes more progressive overload for people, or I'll add the extra set in here because I think that if their nervous system can handle what we're actually doing that week. My last resort would be increasing the weight in this particular week. What we find is it's the least beneficial way to actually get the progress that you're after. And it also increases your risk of injury the most. So slow down the tempo, add a pause in there and increase the rep on that weight. And you'll be well on your way to seeing great, not only neuromuscular brain muscle connection better, you'll get better progress as well. Week 3, this is the adaptation or progression week, really. But in this week, this is where we see motivation start to dip a little bit. So big dip in beginners. By this day, we're 14, 15, 16 days into your new program. Big dips, a little bit with intermediates, but advanced clients are normally the highest motivation that they've got. This is why we have an assessment booked in at the end of week 4. We'll get to that in a second. So what do we want to do in week 3? Well, we're into the groove of the program by now, where we should be. We know how each day operates. We feel confident with the exercise. We feel confident moving around the gym and what's next. We feel confident with the workouts and the duration that they take. Well, here we can increase the reps again. We could keep with those extra sets. Here we may add a little bit of extra weight, but it really depends on how week 2 went. We may just reinforce week 2 again if that's the case. And as a beginner, that's 100% where we start. It's a phase B of the reinforcement week. For the intermediate and advanced clientele, it's a adaptation/progression week. So we're just trying to figure out where somebody sits on that scale and what's going to be the best possible outcome in terms of progression with the safety and the volume of what they physically can handle and what their nervous system can handle in this week. It's a bit of a mouthful, but that's what we're trying to do in week 3. Week 4, we've just hit the final week of our phase. This is our peak performance week. So by now, your brain should have had sufficient exposure to the new routine. It should really begin to solidify the habits, the technique, the tempo, which will carry you through many phases to come. So this phase is really about bridging and adopting the change into a permanent either neuromuscular pathway or a lifestyle, depending on if it's an exercise or a habit that you're trying to do. By this week, we really and truly know or should know exactly what we're doing in each workout, in each exercise, in each set on each day. And we're going to try to maximize each workout this week. Now, people often look at maximizing a workout as I'm going to PB, I'm going to push the most weight. And that is one way to do it. But it could also mean I'm going to try and get the most engagement or solidify my technique so that it is absolutely at the maximum potential for phases to come. Now, with beginner and intermediate clientele, this is exactly where we want to start. We want to really reinforce the habit of the training, of the exercise, of the neuromuscular pathways, of the activation of the muscle and the feeling that you get when you do that exercise so they can carry that on for phases to come. We can add in things like sets and weight and reps later. That stuff is more important first. So what are we looking to do? At the end of this week, we would love to do a mini deload. This could go for a couple of days. This could go for a week. Now, what's a deload? It just means we're going to reduce our output. So we're going to you can continue to work out and you're going to lift a lot lighter. 50% or less would be recommended. But to be honest, you could scrap the resistance training altogether. And what I would recommend is doing a mini reset for your nervous system, which is going to be anything restorative. Could be walking. It could be yoga. It could be meditation. It could be saunas. It could be breath work. Any of the restorative practices, because you're going to get a really big reset for your body. You need to give your body a break, give your muscular system, your ligaments and your tendons just a bit of a couple of days or a week off, help them rebound because they've just been through 3.5 to 4 weeks of grueling exercise potentially, especially resistance-based exercise. And then from there, we're going to give your cortisol levels a nice reduction, any systemic inflammation, a bit of a reduction, and allow your nervous system just to reboot, which actually motivates the beginners and the intermediate clients and demotivates the advanced clients who are always looking to push it. But everybody needs it because if we think back to our macro cycle of 12 months, those 3, 4, 5, 7 days of deload for your nervous system and getting restoration in allows you to perform across the year. And this is where most people tend not to do it. And they just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And then they fall off a cliff and they either get injured or they overtrain and they have multiple weeks off due to just feeling super fatigued, unwell, sick, body aches, you name it. We see it all the time. And 3 to 4 days to a week could be all the difference to performing and feeling your best all year round. Now, let me open the floor. Jeffrey, biggest takeaway from the first 4 weeks of a training phase?
As a beginner, it was really, really hard. But I think I might have said this recently to you guys, that if I could take how I feel now, having been consistent and stuck with it, and turn that into a pill that I could give another beginner who's about to start their journey, so they can just get maybe like a 20-minute hit of what it's going to feel like. It's worth pushing through and being consistent and sticking to it. Definitely.
100%. I often say this when you see people running around the block or in the gyms, if it was as horrible as it was in your first couple of weeks in terms of the pain that you can potentially feel, these places wouldn't be so busy, but you adapt so quickly and you end up loving the feeling of the workout, the challenge, and more importantly, how you feel afterwards and how you feel about the achievement afterwards, which is why everyone's doing so much physical activity. Anything else anybody wants to share or any questions that they have?
I like the concept of when somebody's motivation is at the lowest so-called point in like around week 3, week 4, knowing that they've got some sort of like monthly checkup coming up and having the line in the sand and the accountability that builds to kind of like follow through and finish this. I think that's it's quite a powerful piece for a lot of people that they may not link benefit to if they haven't been explained to them.
Yeah, 100%. And good segue, Matty, because the stats say that you're 50% more likely to get a positive or the outcome that you want out of a phase if there is a check-in or accountability chat booked in at the end of that, which is unbelievable. And that is a great segue into at the end of week 4, we book in our assessment. We call them programming, nutrition, and accountability sessions, but any form of assessment from a coach. And honestly, I think they're the most integral part of any training program. And you should get 12 of those in a year, 3 of them in every 12-week journey. They're super important. They increase the adherence of anybody to the habits that they're trying to form and their program. And they're just a genuine check-in. And let's dive into quickly what that should look like. So first of all, we get this all the time. Why don't we just do them on the gym floor? Why don't we just do them in our next session? The reason being, to be honest, they're quite an intimate personal conversation. And most people don't want to have that conversation out on the gym floor, which is totally understandable. The other thing is gym floors are distracting. One, it takes away from the personal training session in what we're trying to achieve in that session. The second thing is you don't open up and have the same level of conversation as you do in a consult room. And we don't want the distractions of what's happening out there. So the first thing we actually discuss in one of those is actually just an honest personal chat around how someone's going, because how your personal life is going is a big indicator to the success of what the program is going to be, because it's not work and family and health. There's a big crossover of how they all work. So we need to incorporate how they work into a program to increase the likelihood of success, which is something that we talk about a lot. We want to discuss obviously how the phase went. One of the things I love is like data drives decisions. So we want to figure out how we went against our goals. Crucial. We want to celebrate some wins. And there is always a win. If it's just, I came in every single week, one of the things that we see the most is that people do not celebrate the good work that they do. They do 10, 12, 15 great things in a week. They do one thing that wasn't their best and they dwell on the one thing over just the bucket of things that they've done incredibly well at. More pats on the back and self-reflection on the great things that you do, because positivity, especially in your habits, builds consistency and momentum. Momentum builds a lifestyle. So we want to celebrate all the time the great things that people are doing, and they often don't think about them themselves. That doesn't mean we should shy away from things that didn't go well. So there's 2 ways I like to look at it. People will jump in, maybe they're jumping on the scales, let's say, and they get a good result. Most people stop there. They high-five each other and they're done. Yay, we did great this phase. That's not enough. What you want to actually do is say, what went well this phase and why? How did that serve me? Because what we're actually trying to do is get more tools so that when a phase doesn't go well, and trust me, a phase will not go well, that happens for everybody, we need tools and strategies to get ourselves back on track. So by analyzing what goes well, when it's going well, it gives us more tools to analyze later down the road. Contrary, if it doesn't go in the direction that we want, you know what? That's okay too. This is when we want to see our clients actually the most. Most people shy away from it at this stage. I want to see you when things are going better. This is when I want to see you the most, so that we can realign and figure out what's going on. What were the roadblocks that came up in this phase? They're really important. Then we want to figure out, do we have any strategies and solutions that we could have come up with to help them not have derailed our progress of what we actually truly wanted to achieve in this phase? That is the most important thing you can do, because the more times you go and figure out roadblocks and come up with solutions, you're adding tools to your toolbox, which is what we like to say in here. The more tools you have to your toolbox and the more default strategies that you have, the more times that you can actually get yourself back on track and you can help yourself navigate your own health and wellness journey. They're integral to good long-term sustainability. Now, from there, we just want to analyze what happened and figure out, is there anything that is going to occur that's going to affect our next 4 weeks? Let's have a view and actually see and have a think. And 2 things happen. By the art of actually thinking about what's coming up, you can often navigate your way around it. And then if something is going to come up, we can input a default solution right here and now, which increases your likelihood and chances of success. From there, we might do an assessment, biomechanics, strength, stability. We'll retest that for people, and we'll obviously get in some programming, some nutrition, anything restorative base, anything restoration, anything stress and recovery. Again, this is talking about more of our holistic long-term components to a good phase and our good 12-week macro phase. So I'll give you these little takeaway points, and then I'll open the floor for anybody that needs to. have a good long-term macro plan. Make sure it's crystal clear and make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. We like to call it in here your emotional hot button. So it could be, honestly, for me, I'll give you mine. I'm not training for a physique or performance goal. I'm training because I have a toddler and I want to be in the best possible physical health that I can be to keep up with him, not just now, but later in life, which means being physically strong, cardiovascularly fit, and injury-free. And he's only 1 and a bit, and he's already a terror. So I'm gearing up for what is to come. That's my genuine emotional hot button as to why I'm doing what I'm doing. From there, we want to set the intentions around each particular 12-week journey and each particular phase and each particular week within our phase. Now, you don't have to come up with those answers yourself. A coach should be able to relay those answers for you based on your assessment. For you, you want to go in with the intention of, why does this week matter to me? The last thing is book in your assessment and show up when you don't want to. The more times you show up when you don't want to, the better your chances of success are. Any questions? I'll open the floor. We good? Perfect, guys. I really hope that in your next 4 weeks or the next time you have an assessment, you can then come at it with that point of view. And I guarantee you, not only will you enjoy your program more, you will actually maximize what you're doing for each workout, where it lays in each week and where each one of your phases lays out over the next 12 months. I really appreciate everybody spending the time on a Thursday lunchtime to level up their health. Have a great afternoon, everybody.